Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the effects of blood sugar on sleep. Let's also talk about how sleep then affects blood sugar
So the
because
next day, the day after.
yeah, so the day after. So, obviously getting great sleep is is always better because everything functions much better, you recover much better. Blood sugar, blood sugar sensitivity, all that stuff gets much better. So,
It's a sensitivity.
yeah. So insulin sensitivity, blood sugar
Sorry,
management,
just
all
called
that
you
stuff.
out.
Yeah. All that stuff gets good. You're calling me out right before I call you out. So,
Fair enough.
so on the other side of things, when sleep is not good, specifically, I mean, let's just take the easiest example, which is just not getting enough sleep.
Mm,
Um, so you're not getting as deep a sleep, or you're not getting deep sleep for long enough, and therefore the quality and the duration a lot of times suffer for that. So I notice with myself that when I don't get very much sleep, and when I say very much sleep, I say it generalized like that because that's always relative to each person. Although for
hmm
the most part, I think that window is usually 7 to 8 hours.
Yeah,
Usually a good timing for people.
yeah, I'd
You
agree.
start getting more than that, then sometimes that's too much sleep and that can affect you too. Less than that, you start um, usually start seeing some effects from that. But essentially, getting not enough sleep, I definitely notice that my blood sugar is usually chronically higher throughout
hmm
that pretty much whole day, whole next day, because my cortisol levels are just kind of all over the place and usually fairly high because I didn't recover through the night and my circadian rhythms all thrown off and everything.
hmm
What about
I
you?
will, I will. Yeah, absolutely. It's almost hard for me. It's almost hard for me to relate personally because it's I'm so sleep deprived that I only know chronic
Yeah,
hyperglycemia
it's
right
like
now.
the Hulk in the Avengers. Like, you want to know what my secret is? I'm
I'm
always
always
angry.
yeah. That's
You're always
well that
sleep deprived.
well that's literally how I sleep. So I literally fall asleep within a minute or less than a minute every time I go
Yeah.
to bed. Um, so there's that. But I would say I can't comment on this in terms of overall sleep need. Is that just because you feel good the next day doesn't mean you actually got enough sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like because I've been averaging so low, and I'll put a number on it. I'll say I average anywhere from 4 to 5.5 hours in reality in terms of a range.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that if just because you sleep that much or less, don't sleep that much, you're used to it. Your body can learn how to feel good, but doesn't mean that you're metabolically healthy.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference on feeling just in general, feeling good and metabolic health. And that also includes on how you feel and your how good your sleep is. And I can say this because I feel good with the amount of sleep I have, given I literally fell asleep in my chair in my office today, and a patient like woke me up, and that was super embarrassing because it was like a half
Yeah.
a second, like I would like nod it off, like, and he was like, "Yo, Dr. Pano," and I was like, "Yep, yep," and he totally like knew, like he totally saw me sleeping for that half second, which is actually embarrassing.
Oh, yes.
Uh, and so, but yet throughout the day, I felt great. But I know, and actually, because I just got new blood labs, I just know my metabolic health isn't where I would personally want it. So just because you feel good on less sleep, like if you say, "Oh, all I need is 6 hours," and you have no data to back that up,
Yeah.
you just feel good on six. Doesn't mean your body responds good on
Yeah.
six.
And also, like, what are the compensatory mechanisms that are making you feel that way? Whether that's endogenous, like within your own body, or exogenous on the outside. So, are you drinking
Coffee.
like a ton of coffee? Are you taking all these stimulants to make you feel
Mm-hmm.
like you're feeling good?
Right.
Or, and at the same time, like, you may feel good without those things, but is that your adrenaline and your cortisol just driving
Right.
up that whole day? And therefore, you have those crashes in the middle of the day or at certain parts of the day, and you just feel terrible at that time because your cortisol cortisol can't stay high forever. It sometimes will crash, and
Right.
therefore, then you feel it. So like you're feeling good, and then you crash. Well, there's something going on that's not working right because you shouldn't necessarily crash in the middle of the day like that.
Yeah, like literally like the story I just shared today.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But reflecting on when my metabolic health was better, proper sleep definitely was a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know my blood sugars react better. I know this is probably the easiest thing to spot when you know sleep is affecting your blood sugars the day after. It is taking you much more bolusing to get your blood sugar down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this can be confusing for MDI. It's easier to spot, but if you're a pump user, this can be confused because you're like, well, maybe my port is messed up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that can be the confusing duality of not getting a blood sugar down. It's my port or something else going on. But more times than not, when you're not getting enough sleep, it will take more of a correction factor, or it will take more insulin for the food the next day, or it will require more basal throughout the day just to have a steadier level. And if you see yourself creeping up throughout the day when normally you wouldn't, that's a sign that your insulin resistance is higher and sensitivity is lower, based on your sleep performance the night before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes that can last a while
Yeah.
because like obviously you're right now you're living in it, so that's your day to day. So you can kind of like adapt around it and make your basal settings reflect what your insulin
Right. Which is
sensitivity
what I'm
is.
doing. Right.
Exactly. And but then for people who don't live in that and then they have a night of poor sleep, like for me, an example, I don't know, it's been a couple of weeks now that I had a night where I gave in to peer pressure and I stayed up late with
What?
my cousin.
Oh, okay.
And
I was like, you
then
you are invincible to peer pressure,
I
but
know,
to that, yeah, sure, whatever you can do
yeah.
that.
And so, but then I had to wake up early the next day. And so I only got like 3 hours, maybe 4 hours of sleep. And man, like I knew my blood sugar was going to be off that day, but it lasted for, I think, at least 2 days, maybe even into the third day a little bit. And like I wasn't because it had been a while since I had done something like that. And so I wasn't necessarily expecting it to last that long. And so
Mhm.
I did think that my pump site was bad.
Yeah.
And so I ended up changing it shortly, like kind of on that third day or right towards the end there. And I uh, I looked at it, looked fine, put the new one in, and my blood sugar was still hard to control. So I'm like, it wasn't the port site.
Right. Right. So that's when, yeah, that's the opposite. When it ends up being a change and it's still hard to control.
Yeah.
So it happens though. It happens. And sometimes if you're really good most of the time, it's life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta have a little fun, whether it be hanging out with family members, going to the club, or staying late on a project.